What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. What's going on in pop culture right now? Dave here. Another podcast. Gonna get into some music. New EP from Enhypen. New album from Kesha. New album from Louis Capaldi. New collab album Kaytraminé from Kaytranada and Aminé. As well as the glorious return, once again, of the Fast and the Furious with Fast X, Fast 10. So, gonna get into all that. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Follow the link tree, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Get the pod anywhere you can. Just make sure you get it. And also follow the best of 2023 Spotify playlist in the link below for all the best music of the year, including stuff from this week. Let me know what's up, and let's get into it. What's up, welcome to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Enhypen's fourth EP, fourth mini album, Dark Blood. Yes, Enhypen, the quickly rising K-pop male group. They had the 16th most streamed K-pop song on Spotify last year. I think pretty under the radar in that regard. Polaroid Love, in fact, the most streamed song on Spotify on the K-pop side that wasn't from BTS or a BTS member. So think really quickly for a group that, debuted back in 2020 and, has the origins from a reality, competition series. They've quickly risen, and I guess it shouldn't be too surprising because they're signed to a subsidiary of Hive, which is just dominating the K-pop space right now with all their hit groups, basically. But nonetheless, Dark Blood, their first release of the year, about 10 months ago, we got their third EP. And yeah, I think this is a really strong project. 6 songs, really only 5 songs. That first song is more of a, intro. That first song, Fate, it's kind of has a spoken word introduction, builds up to these strings, has this kind of drum line, this repetitive like chant, but not really much of a song. So 5 songs. However, I think these 5 songs are quite strong. And track 2, the single, has a music video out now, Bite Me, on the shortlist for best K-pop songs of the year thus far. I think without a doubt. Bite Me is really good. I love the song. I mean, starting off, you have this like amazing vocal harmony between the members. It's a really up-tempo song. But then like the pre-chorus, man, this song just has addictive melodies and addictive hook after addictive hook. The oh my god, like chant part is so catchy. And basically, the bass coming in as well. The chorus is fun, but it's almost like the least interesting part about the song, But I think it's really good. The singing is quite strong as well. I think that's an absolute banger for sure. And then following that right up, you have Sacrifice, Eat Me Up. The snare on that sounds so good. And the chorus, once again, really sticky. But, what I think I really like about Enhypen is that the vocal range these guys can show off is really fun. And, like, this little vocal flourishes they'll throw in on certain songs. It just makes it really quite enjoyable. I think my least favorite of the songs would be Chacon, track 4, which is totally fine. I just don't really love the beat. It's a bit too washed out for me, a bit too like overproduced, I would say. But the singing still sounds pretty good, all the same. The second to last song, Bills, it's a softer song in terms of the singing, in terms of like the sentiment, but still pretty upbeat, which I really did appreciate. And then the last song, track 6, Karma, really caught me by surprise as well because like out of nowhere you have this like really strong guitar, and this song is almost like a pop punk performance. Like that's the vibe Enhypen is going for with it. The don't give a what part, it just comes across as like very angsty, and like that's just a really, I think, fun vibe to get. You don't get that with much consistency in K-pop. I thought Idol last week on I Feel also was doing some fun stuff with rock production, and I thought Enhypen really nailed it with Karma. So again, for a short project, Dark Blood, having an absolute banger and Bite Me, which is like a layered and interesting banger as well, not just that it hits hard. And then something I think really inspired like Karma, as well as some other decent songs as well, like Sacrifice and Bills. Like it's a pretty solid listen. And I think this is definitely a group to watch. Like if you think about the state of male groups right now, on the fourth gen front, in terms of new groups, it's really only been Enhypen and Treasure that have like really risen up and become like hit groups thus far. And of course, Stray Kids, which is they're a little bit older and more seasoned than them. You know, as BTS hiatus continues and the members go off to do their military service, there is a void to be filled by the new faces. And obviously, we know, high label mates of Enhypen like 17 and Tomorrow Together are certainly out there and competing. So there's no lack of groups, but I think Enhypen is, very quickly making themselves felt as a significant act in the space and quickly rising. Like Polaroid Love being the 16th most streamed song on Spotify from K-pop songs last year. And, if you discount Blackpink and BTS and Twice, it was like IVE and Enhypen are like the next two most streamed songs. Like it's quite impressive that they've gotten to this stage so quickly. So I'm definitely hoping they keep the momentum going. I would love to hear another full length album from them. They only have one Korean full length thus far, but I think Dark Blood is kind of everything you want from like the K-pop mini album. That's kind of the general mode of operation, right? You get a lot of EPs, a lot of mini albums, short, brief listens, but keep that momentum going. That seems to be how the cycles work. And this is, I think, like kind of ideal of what you want from one of these projects, where it's short and sweet, but still has a lot to engage you about, and certainly would entertain all the fans. But I think this is a project that's a great entry point for new fans as well. So let me know, how'd you feel about Enhypen's new EP Dark Blood? And for more K-pop reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, my nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Kesha's fifth album, Gag Order, her first album since January 2020. It's been a little bit for Kesha. This is her last release on Kimosabe Records, aka her last release under Dr. Luke's label, despite the myriad lawsuits and legal issues that have been going on between Kesha and Dr. Luke for several years at this point. It seems like that is largely wrapping itself up, not really to the degree that Kesha would have liked, but it seems that with the music that Kesha is moving forward, and thankfully she'll be able to no longer have to be in business with Dr. Luke's company anymore. So that's, I think, a positive there. But interestingly, I think lyrically this album is also trying to project a step forward, a step beyond, those two comeback albums were communicating. Was it Rainbow and High Road from 2017 and 2020? Those were the comeback albums from Kesha. They were much more triumphant and empowering. It's not quite the same on Gag Order, but I think what's really interesting about Gag Order is that this is, I think, a much more engaging and intriguing album sonically. Just the production is just a lot more varied and inspired, and Kesha's performance definitely is up and down, or all over the place in a fun way, with the introduction of autotune at times, bringing back some of her old school delivery styles. It feels like an inspired work. Notably Rick Rubin co-produced every song alongside Kesha. Kesha's mother co-wrote some songs. She, of course, is a famous songwriter in her own regard. But I think it's an interesting album. Just kind of going through the songs here, there's a lot going on. I think Happy, for example, just straight up acoustic guitar, like an acoustic song. Peace and Quiet, though, has this like really noticeable drum clap, just completely different style of beat, different thing, and has this auto-tune chorus from Kesha that I think sounds really cool. The Drama, this like really fun like electronic loop that then goes into this like heavy distortion section. This album seems to really kind of go all over the place, and I don't know if this necessarily works or like comes together as like this great work, but I think it definitely communicates like a new path, a new step forward with Kesha, because clearly in like what she's singing about, what she's talking about, she's trying to move forward in her life and also not be afraid of talking about when things are down and things have not gone her way. Certainly a lot of her the public stuff has not necessarily gone her way, but I think she's almost kind of taken a step back from the outwardly triumphant stuff she was communicating on the last album. It's not something not a direction I would have necessarily expected, but I think that's kind of interesting. Only Love Can Save Us Now. The delivery on that song from Kesha, very much reminiscent of like Cannibal era Kesha in terms of like the almost like hip hop style of delivery, like on a trap beat of all things, and then goes the intro's up into this big chorus, this big vocal chorus, which is a huge step back or huge change, and then the verses again go into this more like Cannibal Animal era Kesha, the old school Kesha. It's a fun kind of reminder of the kind of music, kind of style she used to have, because that's clearly not what she's into, has been into for a while now. Yeah, so I think like really my takeaway on this Kesha album is that it's the most sonically interesting thing she's made, probably ever, honestly. Just because it's kind of all up and down. Hudson Mohawk co-produced one of the songs as well, but it really feels like something that Rick Rubin actually was directly involved in. We know sometimes he's a producer more in like name only or like in vibes only than being like super hands-on, because he's so busy. But you can definitely feel the influence with him, and it's cool that Kesha's so involved in the production side as well. And yeah, it's not like, obviously I think most of us still love like old school OG Kesha just because it's really fun. And even if it's funny because we think back on that time, like she was critically derided at the time, and like I think miscategorized as someone lacking in talent, lacking in musical ambition. And I think now we clearly know that that is so far from the truth. It'll be really fun if she was to somehow find a way, a motivation, a desire to go back to that style of music, and obviously update it for the 2020s. I'm not going to hold my breath that that's ever going to happen, but I of course would love that. But I do think Gag Order represents like a new kind of sonic direction, and part of that is just the kind of ambiguity and all over the place with this. So pretty cool, pretty unexpected. I didn't really know this album was coming out. I had missed some of those singles, and this kind of snuck up on me, but in a good way. Let me know though, how did you feel about this Kesha album, Gag Order? How did you like it compared to the two comeback albums we've got in the past few years as well? And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Lewis Capaldi's second album, Broken by Desire to Be Heavenly Sent. Yes, the Scottish singer is back with his first album since his debut back in 2019. Been a long time coming for this follow-up from Lewis, and I think most people should know Capaldi at this point because he is the creator, the singer of one of the biggest songs of the last 10 years. That would be, of course, Someone You Loved, approaching 2.8 billion streams on Spotify, the fourth most streamed song all time on Spotify. And it really can't be understated how big Someone You Loved is and was for Lewis Capaldi. Obviously a Scottish singer coming up largely out of nowhere and then exploding with that song, which had a slow build to number one in the United States, but truly is a monumental song elsewhere in the world. It's platinum in the US, but also 15 times platinum in Australia, 8 times platinum in New Zealand, and 8 times platinum in the United Kingdom. Won the Brit Award for Song of the Year and was Grammy nominated for Song of the Year as well. Massive record. Massive record. And that album, that debut album, following Someone You Loved, which came out in 2018, that debut album, Divinely Uninspired to a Hellish Extent, that was the best-selling UK album, not only in 2019, the year it came out, but also in 2020 as well. Lewis Capaldi basically was the biggest artist in the UK in between like Ed Sheeran and Adele albums. Like that was the status he is holding, has been holding. And now you have the follow-up album. And I'm not going to like pretend I was like a Lewis Capaldi fan, but I think it's pretty undeniable that the guy has a tremendous voice and just incredible vocal strength and vocal talent. He is a really strong singer. And that was, of course, a big reason why Someone You Loved became so big. And now you have, the follow-up. And alongside this follow-up, there's been a Netflix documentary coming out about Lewis. He's gearing up for a world tour. A lot of hype has been put on this at least by like the industry. But unfortunately, I would say this second album is just a really safe playing of the hits per se. It's really not ambitious or inspired in the sense of trying to do anything new for Louis Capaldi. It's more or less doing the vibes you already expect from him. That seems to have been partially a label creative decision to go in that direction, to not try and reinvent the Louis Capaldi wheel. And the results, because of how we're getting them, feel a bit uninspired. Now, I find that a bit disappointing because Louis Capaldi is up there in terms of high-end vocalists. Surely this guy can do more than the thing he's already done before. But he doesn't seem to have been given a chance or had the motivation himself to try and push himself beyond what to expect from him. And to some people, that'll be enough, because this will remind them of what they already liked about Louis Capaldi if they were fans. So it's not to say that any of these songs are necessarily bad, because he has such a great, vocals that he can carry his songs on. But the thing is, it's a lot of just kind of that same vibe where he's either really low or really high. That's just how he sings, and that's how his songs have been made. They're either these sweeping choruses, these rapturous, notes, or they're these more milder ballads. And that's kind of all he knows how to make at this point, at least he's been given the chance to make. So, for me, with Broken by Desire to be Heavenly Sent, the moments where there's at least a feeling, an inkling of something beyond the usual from Louis Capaldi, that's where like my ears perk up. That's where I get a bit more interested. I would say the lead single, Forget Me, that actually came out last year. That I think sounds great because, he just has that emotional, like, passion singing, and his Scottish, like, drawl sounds just really good. I love, like, the raspiness of his voice. I think it's a really both unique voice as well, on top of how strong it is, obviously. Also, with Heavenly, Heavenly Kind of State of Mind, sorry. With Heavenly Kind State of Mind, like the kick drum on that song, like it's just a higher tempo than most of his other songs. That guitar line as well, like just really stands out. The Pretender, perhaps the best song on the record. This acoustic guitar beginning, but then has a really awesome build, and the song gets a lot bigger. Leave Me Slowly, right after that, has like a brief, but a guitar solo nonetheless, even if it's a brief one. But yeah, I think ultimately, like, it's just conceptually risk averse as a record and can feel repetitive. And just to me, it's a bit disappointing because the guy is clearly incredibly talented. He has found that success, and I wish he could feel more comfortable pushing himself, because I think a big part of this as well is Louis Capaldi seems like a really likable guy, really active, gregarious, authentic social media persona, presence online, presence publicly, and contrast that with Louis Capaldi being diagnosed with Tourette's, something he's been battling. There's a lot going on, and it's very clear from that Netflix doc and what's been said publicly that the pressure to follow up someone you loved in that first album and the imposter syndrome and all that is real. And now Louis is gearing up for a world tour. I imagine that'll be incredibly successful, but I'm just hoping that perhaps the next record he strikes out to do something a little bit more, because clearly he's not like a flash in the pan type artist. He is that strong of a singer. So like, I think we don't have to worry about that. And hopefully there's a bit more inspiration next time around. But let me know, how'd you feel about the Louis Capaldi follow-up? Are you as lukewarm as I am? You like it more than me? And for more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of the collab album Kaytraminé from Kaytranada and Aminé. Definitely something that largely came out of nowhere to me once we got the lead single Forever a few months ago. But if you think about it a little bit more, it should not come as too much of a surprise, because Kaytranada and Aminé have been working together and have known each other for a very long time. Aminé got Kaytranada's attention and basically befriended the producer before Caroline blew up. Like before Aminé became a mainstream rapper, he had already linked up with Kaytranada after remixing one of Kaytranada's songs. So like they had been in contact for a while. They ended up making this album together in Malibu, which you always love to hear when artists are actually together in person making the music. And we got this Kaytraminé album, short 11 songs, 33 minutes, and I think people were really feeling like this has a chance to be like that summer album, that light, breezy, airy, fun album that can kind of dominate that summer, be very easy to put on for everyone. Not to the degree of Bad Bunny last year, but the same kind of idea of like that kind of album that just sweeps you up for the summer. And unfortunately, I was pretty disappointed in Kaytraminé. It's not so much that there's anything wrong with this album. Kaytranada, I think, as people know, one of the most in-demand and also critically acclaimed producers of recent years. House producer with a really distinct like funk lens. People know from his work with Kendrick and Kali Uchis. He's releases 2 major label albums. Got that Grammy win on the second one, Bubba. People know Kaytranada's music. These are Kaytranada ass beats. They sound great. And Kaytranada, a great fit for a summer record. The issue though is my guy Aminé. I'm a huge Aminé fan. I thought 2.5, his last tape, his most recent drop, thought that was really fun. The production on that was super inspired, but Aminé just sounds so confident on the mic these days. He's really come into his own as a rapper and really blossomed post Caroline. Caroline was the big commercial peak for Aminé, but since then he's like really come into his own with a nice catalog of music. And I saw him live about a year ago. At this point, I thought he was awesome. Great tour. And the crowd was really engaged. People really love him, Big fan of his. But I just think his verses, by and large, were just not up to par with Kaytranada, And it's really funny because they have this creative chemistry, this history together as artists working together, going back and forth. And yet, Aminé just didn't. It's not that I don't think he could fit because, coming into this, thinking about 2.5, think of a song like Charmander, right? It's like if Aminé can do like hyper pop beats and bring energy on that, surely he could fit on Kaytranada, who almost everyone would sound good on his beats, But I think Aminé just, whether it's a lethargicness to some of his flows and delivery, perhaps it's a mixing issue where he just doesn't pop enough over the beat. It kind of goes up and down with the song, but like I was just a bit uninspired with this. Like I was really looking for something to just really grab me as a song. I just don't think that happened. I like the lead single Forever. Pharrell, nice feature as well vocally. Fun, a fun little boppy song. But like nothing really like rises above like, oh, that was nice. That sounded pretty cool on Kaytraminé. And that's kind of my issue because I just had high expectations for this. I think of the songs that probably stand out the most, the early going here. I think Rebuke has been pulling ahead for people with the early streams. I like that one. SDFU 3, Rachel Nichols' line from Aminé is definitely a bar. Love that. In general, like Aminé is like super like explicit with a lot of his lyrics, which I think is pretty funny. On Who He Is, song 1, he says he's he's one of the only men that knows where the clit is. Just super graphic stuff right there. I thought K&A, the last song, I liked Aminé on. But by and large, I just thought like a lot of his verses and his performances were just forgettable. And that's not what I want this album to feel like. I want this to, remind you of like, good Calvin Harris funk wave bounces songs, like the one he has with Frank or the one he has with Schoolboy Q, it's like moments like that. Or something from, I don't know, 99.9%, the Kaytranada album. I don't know. I was let down. Just straight up, I was let down by this, and I think Aminé is like the main culprit. I think it's still perfectly summery, perfectly dancey. It's always listenable. Nothing bad about it. I just wanted this to be great, whereas I think it's only like goodish. Perhaps that's on me for having too high expectations, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of people had expectations for this. These are 2 artists we hold in high esteem when they do stuff on their own. we should not lower the bar because they started to work together, in my opinion, especially because they've known each other for so long. So, yeah, I'm a bit let down by Kaytraminé. I'm going to give it some more listens, though, inevitably over the summer. I will hear it more. Maybe I'll like it more. But, yeah, it just didn't really feel like something I need to revisit after hearing it and, going through it the first few times. And that was just a disappointment to me. But let me know, are you liking Kaytraminé way more than me? I hope you are. I hope this is the summer album for someone, but I don't think it's going to be for me. Let me know how you're feeling about it. And for more rap reviews, dance reviews, music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Fast X, aka Fast 10, the 11th film in the Fast and Furious film franchise. The, of course, biggest film franchise in the history of Universal Pictures. People know it. And it's back. Once again, Fast X, the beginning of the end, billed as the first part of a 2-part finale that Vin Diesel has since teased might end up being a 3-part finale. Either way, we're in the home stretch of the Fast movies, and to some people, it couldn't have come soon enough because Fast and Furious has gotten longer in the tooth, has not been as creatively fulfilling and as broadly entertaining as it had been in its past. I would label the golden years of Fast. This is a lukewarm take. The golden years of Fast is Fast 5, Furious 6, and Furious 7. That is the best segment of Fast and Furious movies. In the post-Paul Walker era, unsurprisingly, the movies haven't been as good. 8 and 9 have been lackluster at best. I think 8's pretty poor. 10, though, I think is better than 8 and 9. I generally had a really fun time with this, but I'm also like a fan of the franchise. I've seen all the movies. I know all the characters. I'm on for the ride. I am also on board for the flaws of Fast and Furious. And I think if you're not someone invested in those flaws, if you're a more casual viewer of some of these films, maybe you haven't seen them all, I'd have a hard time recommending this late era of Fast. But I think if you are a fan and you've been able to stick around through this, downturn, you could say, I think Fast X has a lot of fun stuff to it. I had a pretty good time with it. I'm going to get into the issues, get into the stuff I liked. I'm going to get into the wow stuff, the cameos. I will spoil that soon. So, broadly, I enjoyed the movie, but of course, there's a lot of caveats with liking this franchise at this point. It's really for the hardcore people, I would say. That being said, I think it's pretty fun. A big part of this, let's start right there. Jason Momoa joining the franchise as Dante Reyes, the new villain. Jason Momoa is having a grand old time in Fast X. He is chewing scenery, living it up, being an over-the-top, outlandish, kooky villain. His mannerisms, his fashion, his hair, a brief moment of depravity as he's painting the nails of 2 of his dead goons. Like, he's an intriguing villain figure, I would say for sure. Definitely a step up from John Cena's presence in F9, and also Charlize Theron in F8, because not anything against those performers who are still back around, of course, with Fast X, but I think this is just a more well-rounded villain character. And I think a really fun aspect of this is Fast X begins with archival footage of none other than Fast 5, to most people the pinnacle of the franchise. And we see, of course, the famous set piece where Brian and Dom steal the bank vault in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil and drag the vault with their cars through the streets of Rio. An amazing set piece. And we find out that Dante, Momoa's character, is in fact the son of the villain of F5, Hernan Reyes, the drug lord, the kingpin. And in the process, the Fast and Furious team has used digital insert shots of Momoa and put him into camera of past scenes we saw in F5. This retconning of Fast and Furious continuity is certainly nothing new to the average Fast and Furious fans, and it won't be the last bit of retconning that we get in Fast X at that. But I actually think this is a pretty effective choice and kind of fun as far as how these movies go. I think at this point you have to accept that this franchise is incredibly overstuffed and that the core plot mechanics are really convoluted. Dante, his ability to be a villain, his like power to do what he does throughout the movie. It's a bit unclear how he pulls a lot of that kind of stuff off. We just accept it because you know what? Momoa is fun to watch engage with Dom Toretto. It's cool. Good enough for me. I think a big aspect of Fast X that cannot be understated is that Justin Lin did not direct this movie. Justin Lin, just as the movie was about to go in production, left the film. Justin Lin, of course, helmed 5 previous Fast and Furious movies, and he is a really talented action film director. In its place, Universal hired Louis Leterrier, the French director, who has a pretty solid CV, but definitely is not as celebrated as an action filmmaker the way Justin Lin was. And what we know now from the reporting, especially The Hollywood Reporter, is that Justin Lin was largely felt like he needed to leave this project and leave this franchise behind because of the studio meddling and the meddling of Vin Diesel himself. This is something we had long suspected, but it basically got confirmed that Justin Lin basically had enough and said, fuck this, I'm out. And, another aspect of Fast X is that the third act had to largely be rewritten, and the location of the filming and the location of the story had to be changed because it was previously going to be set in Eastern Europe, but the war in Ukraine changed the logistical ability to pull that off. So a lot was going on with this movie. The budget is incredibly high. Big part of that budget as well is that this is probably the most well-paid cast in a film franchise. Like reportedly $100 million of the budget is cast salaries, which is ludicrous sum for sure. Like you never hear of that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with this film, right? So I'm honestly pretty impressed with how much I had a good time with it, given all the stuff going on. Speaking of the retconning, like John Cena comes back in this film after being introduced in F9 as the never heard of before long lost brother of Dom, in itself a retcon. This time around, though, Jacob, his character, is now a good guy shepherding Dom's son to safety throughout the film. It's just a complete 180 for the character, the guy who was trying to kill everyone in the last movie. But in the process, you actually get John Cena at his best, John Cena's strengths, which is being a comedic action actor and not being afraid to poke fun at himself, basically being everything The Rock is not. And that's my favorite version of John Cena. Things like Peacemaker and Blockers, like that's like Cena at his best. And I think this movie actually got Cena into a place where he's like a much more fun character to be with. So that was a retcon I was actually happy to overlook, but it is incredibly overt that the Jacob character just was completely changed. Another nice thing about the film is Charlize Theron, Cypher, the villain of F8, who was also in F9 a little bit. She actually has something to do in this movie. Charlize Theron, of course, one of the greatest action actresses of our time, has not been given a whole lot to do throughout the Fast and Furious franchise, despite being a big bad with seemingly incredible ability on the technical front. However, we got to watch Charlize and Michelle Rodriguez fight. Michelle Rodriguez is Letty, in her own regard, one of the great action actresses of recent times. Getting to watch them fight was awesome because it was actually like fulfilling, I think, scenes from both of them, and Theron really had something to do. That was awesome. I would have liked more of that stuff because that's like a more grounded like action set piece. I would have loved more of that stuff, but at least it's a step in the right direction for the Cypher character. Backtracking, the first big set piece of the film is set in Rome and involves basically a race to stop a bomb from blowing up the Vatican, a rolling physical bomb. And I think it's a pretty fun set piece, all things considered. A lot of drone shots and vista shots of like Rome, which is a really obviously picturesque city. Unclear how much, if any, filming was really done there. Like you don't really see the actors on the ground at all. It's all like the insert shots with the cars and stuff. So it doesn't really seem like they were really there. But the drone shots communicate it well enough. And the thing about the Rome scene, though, is it couldn't help but remind me of the opening 30 minutes of the Michael Bay Netflix film Six Underground, which takes place in Florence. That is a propulsive 30 minutes, incredibly thrilling, by far the best part about that movie. Michael Bay's action chops, of course, are leagues above what Louis Leterrier can pull off. So it just left me a bit wanting because I've seen an action set piece in Italy featuring cars that was way better just a few years ago. So that immediately stuck in mind to me. But still, pretty solid set piece, all things considered. That's another thing with Fast, right? It's iterating on itself, which in and of itself is iterating on action filmmaking convention of the past. There's a lot of playing the hits and similar beats with this franchise when you're in the 11th movie. At this point, it's hard to things to feel like super inspired, especially with Justin Lin no longer involved. And in its place, you just get things that are bigger and more outlandish and over the top. It doesn't necessarily mean they're always as fulfilling to watch and feel as creatively inspired. So hopefully, Fast 11, Fast 12, whatever we call it, Fast X2. Hopefully that is they find the right temperature with that. Think about back to Fast 9, right? People have talked about for years, right? Fast and Furious has gotten so bigger and so much crazier and over the top. The only thing left that they have left to do is to go to space. And what they do in F9? They went to space. The problem, though, was it wasn't that cool. It didn't land. It was not anyone's favorite moment of that movie, and that was in itself a flawed movie, It just wasn't that awesome. And that's kind of the issue that Fast incorporates right now, where like the execution just might not be there anymore. Speaking to all the retconning, like obviously F9 pulled one of the biggest retcons of all off in the history of the franchise, bringing Han back to life. We thought Han was dead. Just a few movies ago, there was, I think, a really effective retcon, which was Jason Statham's character, Deckard Shaw. Shaw was the one who killed Han at the end of Tokyo Drift in that crash. Then we find out, no, actually death was faked all along by Mr. Nobody in the agency. And it's like, okay, I like Sung Kang. Nice to have him back. I like Han. Han doesn't have a whole lot to do in this movie, and a lot more going on in 9. I think the Han stuff's more fulfilling in 9 easily. You can maybe let it go, right? Now, spoilers to come right now, but they basically run this beat back at the end of this movie. Fast X ends with a massive cliffhanger, basically resolves no plot at all. It's literally a hard cut. If you thought Dune had a hard cut, you haven't seen Fast X, because this is literally a pause in the middle of the action. What essentially would be your third act, conclusion. Just there is no third act conclusion. The third act just goes, and then it has like a brief detente and ends. And when the last scene, Charlize Theron and Michelle Rodriguez encounter a nuclear sub rising up out of the ice of Antarctica. Perhaps it's the sub in Fast 8. I don't remember. Did that sub get destroyed? I don't, there's so much going on. I don't remember if it could be the same sub. But who pops out of the hatch? None other than Gal Gadot. Gal Gadot's character, who died on the runway in Furious 6. So we thought. Once again, they brought someone back to life like they did with Han. People were thinking, what was there left to do? They went to space. The only thing left to do now is to bring back Gal Gadot. Was to bring The Rock back into the franchise somehow. Get him and Vin Diesel to make amends and have The Rock be willing to return. Of course, his character was never killed. He just wanted The Rock and Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Vin Diesel didn't like each other anymore. Those are the only things left to achieve. And guess what? They did both of those in this movie, because this stinger scene is none other than the return of Hobbs, the return of The Rock to the franchise. And I kind of just stood there like with a smile on my face, or sat there with a smile on my face, shaking my head at the end. I was like, wow. All the things we said they had left to do, they did. Space. Gal Gadot's a zombie. The Rock's back. There's nothing left. I don't know what there is left to do. To me, my dream, my pie in the sky idea, which I just don't think will happen with I just don't think Vin Diesel wants to go this route. I'm sure Universal isn't interested in this route either. It would be really fun if the franchise downshifted, pun intended, back to the roots of the franchise, right? Smaller stakes, back to street racing, and actually make it about family. They say it's about family all the time in this late run, But these characters, they don't have any time to have any real emotional scenes. They don't have any time to really have any character building scenes at all, because it's really just a rush to do the set piece, a rush to separate the large ensemble cast that keeps ballooning, separate that cast as quickly as possible. That way you can set up all these different scenes, because that's the only way they can service all these characters at this point. It'd be really cool if they could take it back a notch. But you brought Han back to life. You brought Gal Gadot back to life. You're bringing Hobbs back in. it just doesn't seem like we're gonna go that way. You know, you retcon your new villain to be directly connected to the peak of the franchise with Fast Five. In the case of Dante, it's just all connected and building on top of itself. But in the process, I feel like we're just losing any semblance of stakes. Not that I expect Vin Diesel to die. I don't expect Dom to die. I don't expect the stunts not to pull off. But if no one, even an ensemble supporting character, can die, then I don't know. Like, I think you're just kind of lacking its sense of tension. And if you're lacking the tension, okay, I want the set pieces to be better then. That way I'm entertained enough to not care that there's no real tension, you know? So it's a really fun place to be for all its outlandishness and over the topness and convolutedness. And we'll see, I thought Brie Larson, the character, introduced as Mr. Nobody's daughter we didn't know about. Fine. Brie Larson's, the script doesn't do her a whole lot of favors. She's a talented actress, Oscar winner, but she doesn't have a whole lot to do. She looks great, obviously. The action stuff she does get to do is fun, but I would like more from that character, and I thought her performance was a bit stilted. The other villain, who's not really a villain until the end, is, I forget his name, the guy who plays Jack Reacher on Amazon, a massive hulk of a human being. He's like pretty solid, pretty fun. I was a bit confused about how he was actually bad and connected to Dante once that like twist at the very end of the movie comes to be. But he fit in fine. He actually could go like toe to toe in the scene with Toretto, so that was cool. Yeah, I think you think about like the ensemble, right? Like Jordana Brewster's in the movie incredibly briefly, but this reminds you of one of like the glaring plot holes of this franchise is that Brian O'Connor, Paul Walker's character, is not killed off. He's just out of frame moving forward, and he also will never step in to save his family, his extended family, at any time, right? So if you want to be afraid of where this franchise could go next, I think there's a non-zero chance that the very last movie might feature Paul Walker's brothers plus, CGI, AI, stand-in facial tech to digitally recreate Brian in one way or another. Would not be shocked if we saw something like that. We know his brothers were involved in double work to complete Fury 7 after Walker's tragic death. I don't want that to happen. I don't think anyone wants that to happen, but don't rule it out is all I'm saying. Jordana Brewster's barely in the movie, right? Roman and Tej and Ramsey, they have really, and Han, they have nothing to do all film. They're just kind of going from place to place, trying to meet up with Dom, and they don't. The movie ends, and they're almost back up with him, but they don't actually see him at all after the very beginning of the movie. And, in a sense, it's kind of playing the hits of what they've been doing recently, right? It's like Roman and Tej, Ludacris and Tyrese. It's the same bit they've been doing, just kind of bagging on each other. But I don't know, like I do find it really fun just because I think Tyrese is still just really hilarious as Roman. Like, he's played for comic relief. He has been for some time now. But I still laugh. I don't know what to say. Like, I have a really good time with them, even if they really didn't get to do much of anything in this movie. Yeah, I don't know. That's a lot of stuff, Crazy cliffhanger. This movie, Fast X2, whatever it is at least 2 years away. It hasn't been filmed yet. We'll see if it ends up being the second of a 3-part ender. The box office with this movie is coming in a tad down from F9, which is a real dip because Fast X is coming out in a stronger theater environment than F9 did in 2021 during, the pandemic was still really affecting movie theaters at that time. So the franchise is in decline, that's for sure. Not going to gross $1 billion this movie, but $800 million, still a really solid performance worldwide. Obviously, this movie cost a lot for various reasons: COVID-related, salary-related, reshoot-related. The delays between directors cost production time. Expensive movie. They shouldn't cost this much moving forward, just because the franchise actually can't sustain that anymore. Like the performance in China doesn't match what the performance was 6-7 years ago, and it's not going to. So you need to recalibrate what you expect this movie to pull off. But still really solid, really good blockbuster franchise in terms of performance. Even if it doesn't hit $1 billion, 800 million plus, it's still really strong. Nothing to sniff your nose at. So there's a lot of runway left for the decline of Fast and Furious. Let's slow the roll on trying to bury the franchise. We're far off from that, that's for sure. But I'd be curious to see how these legs perform. As Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is holding on well. Little Mermaid's about to come out just this upcoming week. So we'll see how the movie holds. The critical panning won't help. We'll see. But let me know, how did you feel about Fast X? Obviously, there's a lot of stuff about the movie, a lot of things to like and enjoy, a lot of things to scratch your head at, a lot of things to be confused at, a lot of stuff that's a combination of all of that. I think that's just kind of what these movies are at this point. Yeah. So Fast X, let me know what you thought. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do it for the pod this week. Next week, I have a absolutely gigantic mega pod coming up. The end of the series for Succession, Season 4. The end of Barry, Season 4, also the series finale. The end of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Season 4, also the series finale. The end of Survivor 44. A new album from Arlo Parks, new album from Dreamcatcher. And, oh yeah, a new Disney live-action remake film. One of the biggest movies of the year, surely, The Little Mermaid. A lot to get into next week, so make sure you subscribe, hit the link below, let me know what's good, and I'll see you next week.